Hi everyone, welcome to another CyberFest event. As you know, we're fiscally sponsored by the Intersection for the Arts. Tonight's event is being ASL interpreted by ProBonoASL. And of course, that's our SF ZineFest logo. Tonight is Thinking Captions with our week 2 guest of honor, Deth P's son, and the artists that he has invited, Eric Nakamura, Kerry Ann Lee, and Hellen Jo. This is the order of events that are going to happen tonight. We have just me talking for a couple of minutes. Then we'll go over some house rules and expectations for another 5. I will introduce myself and the artists, and then each individual artist will present work. This will take about 45 minutes or so. And then we'll have a Q&A with the artists, and they'll take some questions that you all may have. And then we'll just close out the event. Before we continue, I just wanted to acknowledge that right as we were starting, we saw the news that Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg had passed away. And we just wanted to acknowledge that with about 20 seconds of silence, please. Thank you. As you know, San Francisco Zine Fest was founded in 2001. It was founded as a gathering place for artists and writers from all around the world, but especially the Bay Area. And typically it's been held as a one-day festival. I know earlier it used to be 2 days and then narrowed down to like a day. And now it's a 3-week-long festival this year. Last year, we had about 240 exhibitors and over 5,000 attendees. And due to COVID-19, our 2020 festival is 100% virtual. So what is CyberFest? Well, CyberFest is 3 weeks of programming. As I mentioned, it goes from September 6th through September 26th. We've had exhibitors show and tell, readings, workshop, demos, interviews, which you're attending right now. And instead of our 1 guest of honor, we have 3 guests this year. Our week 1 guest of honor was Alex L. Combs. Week 2 right now is Deth P's son, and next week it'll be Tana Tucker. Just wanted to go over our Safer Spaces policy. This is something we implement at our in-person festival as well as all the events that we curate. And I'm going to read it, and you can read along as well if you'd like. We are committed to providing a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of gender, gender identity expression, sexual orientation, disability, the physical appearance, body size, race, or religion. We will not tolerate harassment at SF ZineFest events in any form. Individuals violating the Safer Spaces policy may be sanctioned or expelled from the space or the event at the discretion of any San Francisco ZineFest organizer. So please respect people's opinions, their beliefs, their differing states of being, and differing points of view. Always get explicit verbal consent. Always get explicit verbal consent before taking someone's photo or crossing other personal boundaries. Be responsible for your actions and aware that they may have an effect on others regardless of your original intent. A safe and respectful community is everyone's responsibility. Guidelines for tonight's events. Please keep your video off to prevent lagging. The hosts, guests of honor, ASL interpreters will have their videos on. And of course, for tonight's events, the invited artists will also have their videos on. Keep yourself on mute unless you are presenting. ASL interpretation is provided by ProBonoASL's Artie and Anchondo and Selena Flowers tonight. Be mindful of folks who are blind or visually impaired by being specific and descriptive when sharing your work. Please note that this Zoom session is being recorded and broadcast to Facebook and YouTube. Above all, please be respectful. It's me. I'm tonight's host. I'm a queer South Asian artist, writer, and educator based in Oakland. I'm currently a kindergarten teacher and one of the organizers of San Francisco Zine Fest. My self-published first book, 100 Years From Now, Our Bones Will Be Different, with artist Lawrence McWilliams, received a starred review from Publishers Weekly. In 2018, my zine Hair was awarded Best Zine and Best Per Zine by Broken Pencil Zine Awards. I'm currently signed by LGR Literary, and I'm currently supposed to be working on a children's book. It's getting there. It's almost done, I think. I'm on it. You can find more information about me on anandvedawala.com. And this just shows some of my book covers and some of my art. All right. The presenting order will be Eric Nakamura. We'll be going on for 10 minutes, then Kerry Ann Lee, then Hellen Jo, and then finally our guest of honor, Deth P. And I'm going to read Eric's bio first, and then I'll pass over the screen to Eric, and then he can take it away. Something is just in the way here. Okay, great. Eric Nakamura founded Giant Robot as a photocopied and stapled zine in 1994 and grew the publication until late 2010, early 2011. Giant Robot magazine reached a multiracial audience interested in Asian popular culture and became known as the premier magazine in the field. Nakamura built on the success of Giant Robot with stores and galleries in Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco, and has curated over 300 exhibitions. Currently, he works in and owns the Giant Robot store and GR2 Gallery in Los Angeles, which continue to offer pop culture goods and hold art exhibitions. In 2017, Giant Robot Media was launched as a new entity. You can see and read articles at giantrobot.media. The project tapered off in 2018. Nakamura holds a degree in East Asian Studies from UCLA and is currently a board member on the West Los Angeles Sawtelle Neighborhood Council. You can sign up for the weekly Giant Robot email or the less frequent West LA Sawtelle email. And I'm going to stop sharing and take it away, Eric.
Sorry, I ended up resigning from that West LA Sawtelle Neighborhood Council. I resigned in February or March, so sorry about that. I actually didn't offer a correction.
No worries.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons, but I guess it's really not important. But yeah, I don't do that anymore. So nonetheless, I guess I don't know. That's not a place for a zine person to be at, in my opinion. But for many reasons too. But I guess I'll just show you how I started. I started. So this is not the original zine, but it was a staple and fold zine that looked like that. That was the front cover. So basically, it was a staple and fold zine. But I think the reason why we started is there was kind of, I guess this is 1994. There wasn't much in my interest. So there was a lot of punk rock zines that were amazing, but there was not many in things that weren't music related. I guess there's some movie ones, but there was nothing that really captured the things I liked, which was, I guess I like different kinds of pop culture, monster movies. I mean, you know, whatever, just interesting pop culture things, I guess, from all over the world, frankly, but nothing really captured it all. And as I was trying to figure out how to, I don't know, I was kind of interested in writing. I wanted to find places, an outlet for myself to begin writing about these things that I like and, you know, exploring them more and presenting them, but there wasn't a place. And of course, the only place for that is a zine, right? That's actually the way to get that done. So that's how Giant Robot started. And this is a reprint of the first two issues, but the first two issues were staple and fold, photocopied, just like what a zine should be, right? Most of the time. And basically, I mean, everything was pre-computer, so everything was pasted up on paper and very rough. The writing's rough too. The font is just way too small. Just all the things that, you know, just all the things that a zine could be, I guess. So the thing was, I wanted to put as much into a zine as you would get when you bought a magazine, right? Let's say you bought Time magazine, for example. For bad example, you would get, you know, whatever, was it 100 pages? And you know, you would get articles, you would get all different kinds of articles, I guess, different lengths, maybe photos, maybe just tons of content. I wanted to make that. So we made a zine that was 68 pages, I think, in the first issue, but it was just photocopied and just full. That's why the font's so tiny. It's like, that's 8-point font. But we wanted to add a lot of articles and lots to read, and give you a lot to read. And the first issue was only $2, right? That was kind of how zines were. So I think that was kind of important, was to make it low priced. And I think that era zines were also low priced. They were $2 items. I mean, that was very common. So I was very happy to make it that way. And the next issue was the same thing. It was just like, let's do this again, but soon, because I think one of the first pitfalls of making zines is not going past the first issue. Well, for getting to the first issue is also important. A lot of people want to make a zine. They don't even make the first issue, but I wanted to be able to make sure that we could make the next issue, and then followed up with that with a bigger copy, bigger size magazine, or I guess you would call it. So we were still in the zine kind of category, but I wanted to show you basically so, it started off this way, and then it just expanded little by little. And, we eventually became a full-fledged magazine, just full-fledged, available at every Barnes and Noble, whatever, Border, any newsstand. It kind of grew into this kind of much larger than I ever expected, right? So it's like, and the articles kind of would, I guess they kind of oscillated. They went from Asian pop culture, like from Asia, then it went into Asian American topics. It went into punk rock. It would talk about things here that we liked, and the funniest part was, as we got older, everything started to change, right? So we had, we went from maybe we were kind of featuring artists like Takashi Murakami. This is in the year 2000. Our magazine was now really glossy and with color inside and all that kind of stuff. But the whole thing was, it was so broad and big because we were covering these big artists. But then the whole thing, I think, that we realized was, wait a second, we're locals. We're from LA. We go to zine fests. Our friends are indie artists. I mean, art does not have to be global to be important. Art can be local and still be as great. So, we were covering Sana Hong, local artist. Some of them weren't even Asian. Margot Kilgallen, not Asian, but awesome and amazing and legendary. Space Invader, French artist, but kind of has an aesthetic, maybe. I mean, video game style aesthetic. So it kind of touched me, at least. And I think, Cozy and Dan, another local artist at the time, they were just out of college. So, and then I wanted to show you something that really important that I brought today. The Deth P Sun cover, giant robot with Deth P Sun on it. And, kind of goes full circle that now Deth P Sun is invited to a zine fest and then can invite me to be on a panel, which I'm honored by. First off, I could say I'm honored by, but I always think that since Giant Robot began in 94 and it stopped in 2010 and we did 68 issues, I like to think that we kind of kept this indie spirit, although I will say that later on it got more and more difficult. We had advertising from big apparel companies, automobile companies, movie companies, animation, video games. I mean, it was just tons of stuff. And then, everything just kind of changed a little bit. So, I like to think that we kind of kept some roots of our zine interest. But, as it went on, it did become kind of a full-fledged magazine. It became a full-time job for many people. I was able to, literally we had a staff that was all paid and so forth. This became a career. Zines weren't necessarily going to be a career. It was sort of this was fun, and it was still fun all the way, but things change a little bit, it becomes more business-like. So, then that's where the stores come in. I opened a Giant Robot store and so forth, it kind of moved on. Hey, line change. Hi there. Anyway, so yeah, it changes a little bit, and we opened up a shop, a gallery, one in San Francisco and New York, which now aren't there, but to this day, I still work at a our Giant Robot store, the gallery. We carry zines now by other people. I'm starting to go back to making zines again, like with photography, and I still go to Zine Fest. Like I actually try to table at many Zine Fests. So I like to say it's kind of come full circle where I can do zines still and have a good time with it. And but also have like a little bit of the history. I guess I go back a long way, as do, I mean, everyone else on this panel, but I mean, I go back a long way. So, but that's basically the story of Giant Robot in a nutshell. I've told it a bunch of times. So I feel like I'd rather be most transparent and honest about it here, because this is the SF Zine Fest. This is really important. So anyways, that's about the time I want to take. I don't want to go any further. So if you have any questions.
I actually have a question. Can you actually show that cover that Deth did, like closer to the screen, so we can get a better shot of it? Great. And what kind of zines do you write? Like, what kind of work do you specifically create? You like highlighted so many other folks.
Well, it's like right now I was doing photography. I did photography this whole time. So I did I published old punk rock photography I did, and old meaning late 80s, early 90s. I was shooting bands. So I actually made a couple copies, and I have plenty of negatives that I haven't touched. And then I started doing photography for fun, and then I do that. And they're called, I forgot the name. Whatever, wait. I already forgot the name of my own zine. I'm sorry about that. See, that's kind of how it goes. It's for fun, and I really enjoy it. And I just kind of often I give them to people, as with the punk rock zine, which is called From the Pit. But the zine I do is called, I already forgot what. Yeah, it's not a well thought out.
Think of it. Think of it.
I'm really sorry about that. That's so dumb, right? But I do have copies here, and I just totally forgot. So, nonetheless, that's kind of what I do. But I still I was co-teaching a Zine Fest with Todd Hanma at the Pitzer College. I think I did that for about 3 years, maybe. And the class still continues. I just don't do it right now. And but I still go to, I tabled at the Long Beach Zine Fest the last few years, which is amazing. And the LA Zine Fest is a beast. So I've done that a few times too.
Yeah. I mean, I think we've been fortunate, especially on the West Coast, to have so many amazing zine festivals who are always supporting like local artists, like you started to focus again on with Giant Robot. Which is great. Sure. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna turn my video on. And Eric, if you could turn off your video while I get the next person ready. And the next person we have is, let me just share my screen. Kerry Ann's ready. Next artist is Kerry Ann Lee. Kerry Ann is a visual artist, designer, and scholar in design at Massey University College of Creative Arts in Wellington, New Zealand. Kerry Ann's actually joining us from New Zealand right now. They're in the future. It's Saturday there right now. Lee's art and design practice is rooted in her experience of being a New Zealander of Chinese descent and frequently explores these cultural intersections. This includes topics such as Chinese settlement in the 19th century, particularly the establishment of Chinatowns and Cantonese urban diaspora communities in New Zealand. Lee is also known for her independent publishing work, especially zines, including Help, My Snowman's Burning, and Permanent Vacation. Her practice frequently employs collage. Lee has undertaken international residencies in China, Taiwan, US, Mexico, and Australia, and exhibits regularly in New Zealand. Lee's 2017 solo exhibition, Fruits in the Backwater at, and please correct me if I mispronounce this, at Pataka Art and Museum explores notions of identity and place, with juxtaposition of Chinese and New Zealand cultural signifiers a central theme. In December 2018, her installation Return to Skyland opened within the Terracotta Warriors Guardians of Immortality exhibition at Te Papa. Kerry Ann, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Anand. Tēnā koutou katoa no whanganui a tara aho ko Kerry Ann Lee toko ingoa. Hi, my name is Kerry Ann Lee. I'm a visual artist, designer, educator, and zine maker from Aotearoa, New Zealand. And I'm very honored to be here. So thank you very much, Deth. Thanks, San Francisco Zine Fest and interpreters. And also thank you very much, Eric, for your presentation. It's nice to kind of finally make these connections as I first learned about Deth P's son's work before we became friends through the pages of your magazine, Giant Robot, which I used to have a subscription for. So it's a nice kind of, gathering in that sense. So I followed the briefing by way of having something prepared. I've got a bunch of things to share with you, so I'll just share the screen. Let's see. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Cool. Okay. Now. Okay, so this is a Polaroid of pre-Y2K me using the photocopier before it got destroyed at a friend's parents' office after hours to make zines. Like Help My Snowman's Burning, the kind of feeling of those first A5 black and white sporadical zines about punk politics and fun times. I'm also an independent music fan and supporter, and this is a photocopied cut and paste poster for a punk fest of yore. As mentioned, collage is key to my practice. Homemade is a limited edition illustrated artist book featuring personal and community stories about Cantonese Chinese settlement in Aotearoa. Permanent Vacation is a thematic magazine that I edit, art direct, publish and distribute once in a blue moon, collaborating with friends across the world. And it's often through these snail mail relationships that these things come about. And this is Heat of 1,000 Suns, which is a risographed zine of journal entries recorded while overseas across several years. The black and orange ink on yellow, cream and lilac paper sort of came about in a dream. So I figured I'd read an entry that I wrote that's published in this zine when I was doing an artist residency in Shanghai in 2009. I gravitated towards half demolished buildings with old posters and wallpaper still clinging on, trying to find a personal connection in this city that I hadn't been to, and struggled along speaking little to no Mandarin Chinese. This is an homage to local heroes I met. It's called Letters Written but Never Sent to People in My Neighborhood who I probably won't ever see again. Dear Xian Xing Lo, Mr. Chen told me to call you Xiaolu as you're only young, 18 in fact. You totally look it, but I got a shock when I heard that you're here with your teenage buddy from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. every single day. Your mate said that you were asleep when I asked where you were, when I returned back to transfer files onto my USB stick. I told Chen to tell you that you're pretty damn hardworking, which is a good and admirable quality. Chen said it's a Chinese thing, which is generally very true, although I've met some lazy Chinese too. When I asked what your pop does, he told me that he's a rural farmer out in some town somewhere I don't know, and that you grew up in the country, which could also attribute to you freaking out when I was speaking to you in English and your hardworking nature. I wouldn't know about the countryside, being a city kid, but I do recognize that look on your face when Mr. Chen told you I was a design teacher. The place that I lived in Shanghai was called the California Gardens. This is a photo montage that I created using found fragments describing this dreamlike, desolate place on the outskirts of Shanghai. This was a large print that I cut up and exhibited as part of a show. So the type of works I do are oscillate between publications to exhibitions. This is something between this is the unavailable memory of Gold Coin Cafe, which is the story of my parents' cafe takeaway in the 1980s in inner city Wellington. This is an artist book comprising of an orange menu folder stuffed with photos, facsimiles, prints, and paper tokens. The Bay Hill Times Gazette is a cut and paste tabloid made up of old newspapers from the 1960s about my dad's wayward teenage years in Timaru, a small town in New Zealand. Alternating Currents features interviews with people in cities around the world. The first issue features Indigenous stories from Taiwan in the form of a fold-out Chinese and English bilingual zine. And the third issue is around the suburban mall in Porirua in New Zealand. While in Porirua, I made a jumbo 44-page zine that covered a 42-foot shop window facade. The zine reworked community newspapers from between 1967 to 1970 as a giant graphic black and white and red printed publication. So working big is fun. Knowledge on a beam of starlight was a commission for the National Museum of New Zealand, Te Papa Tongarewa. This 19-foot rainbow triptych lightbox table presented writing prompts and images from the museum collection for folks to hang out, draw, trace and make zines with. My friends and I are part of a group called the Asian Aotearoa Arts Hui. In 2018, I directed it as a national arts festival that took over Wellington for a whole month. These are the promotional posters designed by Lindsay Yu, featuring my artwork on the left, Kim Lowe in the center, and Ant Sang on the right. This event opened up spaces for cross-cultural and intergenerational encounters, including at Massey University College of Creative Arts, where I teach design. Here's a zine making workshop at the library led by Hellen Jo from the Migrant Zine Collective. I really enjoy working alongside other zine makers and teachers like Tim Danko, who's part of the TV competition Comic Collective, featuring artists of all abilities who make some of the most free and expressive zines I've seen. These have been well received when I take them overseas. Here I invited him to run some workshops at the library with my design students. I thought I'd throw some of my recent commercial illustration and design work that I've done for book covers for Pip Adam, Helen Heath, and Nina Powell's, who's just been nominated for a UK Poetry Prize. This is a billboard as part of a show I had in Wellington, New Zealand. I originally made the work while in Mexico City. It's a lyric from a Pixies song, and the band just happened to be touring in town while the billboard was up. They belong to a series called Placeholders. These are twin postcard books featuring song samples and found pictures in the form of karaoke-styled visual mixtapes. Last year, I was lucky to collaborate with Roosevelt Tan from Satellites to make this large-scale sticker bomb installation inside an old concrete silo commissioned by the Smithsonian APA in Auckland Museum. It was called "At the Bottom of Every Wishing Well is a Mama Asking If You've Eaten Yet." I started Red Letter Zine Distro in 2001 as a punk rock mail order zine catalogue, introducing New Zealand audiences to some of my favorites like Comet Bus, King Cat Comics, Bamboo Girl, and Heart Attack. But this is now flipped, becoming an occasional distro whereby I present Aotearoa zines, comics, and artist books to the world, like at the Hong Kong Art Book Fair in January just past. Here's a sample of some works I represent and that were distributed in Mexico City at Replica in 2017. So this is back into my own work. Fruits in the Backwater was an exhibition and a collaborative zine that explored Aotearoa New Zealand as a place to grow much needed fruits of contemplation. We're geographically isolated from elsewhere, so we must look closer to the ground. So a good place for this is the shoreline, the place where I'll rest and wave to you from across the mighty Pacific Ocean. This is the last piece of writing that I'll share, also featured in Ahead of 1,000 Suns. It's about a day of possibility, which began with escaping a graduation ceremony and tumbling down sand dunes towards the sea in the south coast of Dunedin. The hot air was creeping under our shirt collars and formal wear, threatening to spoil everything. One last ritual as we look for an exit strategy to save ourselves. We run away to the sea because the water cleanses and makes things new and better. The fog erases the horizon line so that it's just one big sheet of grey sinking into the deep, wet rumple, detailed lines drawn by surfers diligently and with no egos. The intertidal zone is a bully, claiming whatever it wants, sucking everyone out and out and out, and sometimes back again. Caro's 5-year-old son leads the charge, rolling down the sand towards the sea. you call, I follow. Out of control, nauseous but content. Rye climbs a steep bank and we wave from afar. Reckless abandon only works when you're not reminded of it. This place takes energy as well as gives it. We make our absolution at St. Kilda and know it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kerry Ann, for sharing all of that. It was beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I started thinking about then my culture and represent. I feel like I'm not representing more of myself. I'm like, oh my God, look at all that you are doing. And what is the month-long festival again that you do that's called in New Zealand?
Well, that was something we did a few years ago. It was the Asian Aotearoa Arts Hui. Yeah, it's yeah, it was the first time it manifested as a big festival because it's very much sort of a gathering of Asian Aotearoa arts practitioners. And yeah, it's very much a sort of experimental platform, but a network by all means. So we sort of try and work and create things, but also, yeah, find those sweet tensions to try and collaborate and grow.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you, Anand.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to share my screen one more time so we can not see that. Okay. Our next artist is Hellen Jo, who was born in the American South in 1983, but grew up in San Jose, California. She came of age in Berkeley, Oakland, and San Francisco, where she dropped out of college twice while developing her DIY comics and art practice. She currently works as an illustrator, cartoonist, a merchandise peddler, and painter in Los Angeles. Her art explores and exalts the power of sullen, strong, and pissed off Asian American girls and women. Hellen.
Thanks, Anand. I'm Hellen, and I have a big ass like slideshow, so I guess I'll just share my screen. But before I did that, I also pulled out all of my zines. I haven't made that many, but I thought maybe people might be interested in seeing the old stuff I've done. So I started making zines in 2002 when I was at UC Berkeley. I was like a failing student, and I really liked to draw, but I didn't know that there was this form of like self-publishing where you could just walk into bookshops and be like, hey, buy my stuff. And you just had to be like arrogant and powerful to get people to buy your crappy little zine. So these are the first 3 zines I ever made, called Komisches Buch. It's like I was a German major at Berkeley. It means strange book, and they're all autobio comics. You know, comics about living alone for the first time and having crushes on people. I mean, these are like awful comics. I will never republish them. You'll never read them if you haven't seen them. This one I did with my favorite band at the time, the Clarendon Hills. You know, but I was just discovering zines and graphic novels at the time. I was really influenced by Giant Robot. I actually have one issue that has a comic of mine in it from a long time ago. And I was just doing everything except studying. So, you know, I made another band's fanzine. I made my own illustration zines. And I was just making these at my various office jobs or at the school library. I made a full-length horror comic called Paralysis. Very proud of it. It's very gory. You know, at the time I was reading a lot of Maruo and Junji Ito, so it's obviously very influenced by them. There's another horror comic, Blister number 1, never made a number 2. Gin and Jam number 1 is like a pivotal comic for me. It's the first comic that was ever published by Sparkplug Press, run by the late and great Dylan Williams. And I was just shocked that someone would want to publish any of my work. You know, people have been asking for years if I'm going to make a second issue, and I used to say yes for about 10 years, and then in the 12th year I was like, it's not happening. You know, I republished it as my own zine version. I've got Deep Cut, old wordless zine. In 2013, Youth in Decline put out Frontier. It's a zine of my watercolor paintings. You know, I was doing a lot of these at the time. I made a couple poetry zines, and I was very bowled over by Kerry Ann's poetry. So beautiful. These are terrible. I am a horrible poet, but I understand like the, you know, it's another way to express things. And like when you make them into zines, it's an accessible way to share your poems and also artwork. You know, this is one I made last year with Tiny Splendor Press here in Los Angeles. Here's another one, Whatever Brings Me the Ocean. My friend Marlon wrote this poem and I illustrated it in a single card. Made a planner last year. You know, I like to stay organized. Okay, and now I'll show, I'm gonna just blast through the slideshow. Let's see, does this work? I'm sharing screen. Okay.
Yep, it works.
Oh, you can see, okay, great, perfect. All right, so Hellen Jo, brief overview, and I'm gonna run through this and I'll try to be as descriptive as possible to be accessible. So my name is Hellen Jo. I live in Los Angeles, California, but I'm a Bay Area native. I'm a double college dropout. I'm a cartoonist, an illustrator, and etc., meaning I've also worked in storyboarding and TV animation, GIF animation, editorial illustration. I've translated a graphic novel. All the jobs I've ever gotten, all the opportunities I've ever had are because I'm so invested in zines and you know, small scale distribution, small press distribution. Like I just made these comics because I was bored and I was depressed, and it was a way to share my work without having to know how to make a website or how to, you know, pre-social media days. I would literally see Eric Nakamura walking around in Berkeley and I would just like press a bunch of zines on him, like, please look at my artwork. I love your magazine. And eventually he was like, yeah, this is some good stuff. Come be in a group show. And it's like, it just worked. Like I just kept making stuff and pressuring people to look at it. And, you know, now I'm enjoying this successful career where I'm just doing the same thing that I've been doing. Oh yeah, so I'm not describing the images, sorry. These are all images of the zines I've made, which I just showed you. I've also done a lot of comics anthologies, and these are a few. You know, Diamond Heights was in Paper Cutter, the Blobby Boys fan comic was for Vice, the watercolor comic in the center was for Koyama Press, the lower left comic was for a Poketo wallet. The most recent anthology I did was Lab #4, and I wrote and drew a true ghost story that happened to me. Very creepy. I also do some editorial illustration. I've done covers, posters, covers for books and magazines, and a New York Times Sunday Review illustration. I've only ever done one and I'm really proud of it. I've done work for bands, for beverage companies. I also worked in television as a storyboard artist for several years. That's why I moved down to LA from the Bay Area. I worked on regular shows, board artist and a revisionist, and these are GIFs of an episode I worked on. I worked on Steven Universe for 10 episodes as a board artist. I wrote some songs. These are some screenshots and promo images and board images from the episodes I worked on. I worked on Esther Pearl Watson's pilot for Cartoon Network, Unlovable, based on a graphic novel as a board artist and a designer. That was really fun. And then I moved to Fox ADHD and I worked as a board artist and designer on Ben Jones's show. And I got the job because Ben Jones is a cartoonist. He remembered me pressing a comic on him like 15 years ago. And he was like, you need a job? And he's like, yeah, totally give me a job. And I got to, you know, draw these crazy things. The last big thing I worked on was the short for Vice called Party Legends, where I animated Bobcat Goldthwait's tour stories when he toured for Nirvana in 1993. After that, I stopped working in television. I did a few GIFs, you know, for Giphy. These were commissioned by Super Deluxe, RIP. And then I got a random offer from John and Quarterly, the publisher in Montreal, asking if I would like to translate this graphic novel by Hong Yeon-sik, a Korean cartoonist. And I'm not a translator. And I'm not even like an amazing speaker of Korean. I'm a heritage speaker. You know, I was born in the US and I grew up speaking it with my parents, but they wanted a cartoonist and a native speaker of English. So I worked on this for a couple of years. I was actually really proud of it. I also did the lettering. You know, I'll do whatever job you throw at me because I get bored really easily. I have no focus. But throughout this entire time, I spend most of my practice drawing and painting. And as you can tell, I really only draw girls and women. They're mostly Asian American, generally POC. They're pretty angry, pretty bored, really disrespectful. I use a mix of watercolor and brush pen, some gouache. You know, there's a Riso print in the lower corner. These are all just paintings of maybe the girl that I wanted to be as a teenager. I was bullied a lot, and I hated my bullies, but I also envied them and I admired them and I really wanted to be them. It was like this complicated thing. You know, you see them, they degrade you, and then you're like, how can I be like that? How can I have that kind of power? So I've basically spent my entire adult life trying to attain that through drawing. And you know, these are the types of people that I want to be, just like assholes, strong assholes. And yeah, I don't know. It's all I draw. Part of it is because when I first started working in comics and illustration, I just rarely ever saw depictions of POC or even like Asian American characters, female characters in any kind of strong light. They were always excessively adorable, or they were anime, or they were, you know, mail order brides, or they were ornamental. And it was really frustrating because I didn't identify with any of those depictions. And it's like, no, I need some like gross, badass, like scary as fuck, you know, like Asian American girls that aren't necessarily heroes, but they're cool. They're really cool. Everybody respects them because they're afraid of them. Like that's just, I just wanted to see that. And I figured, well, the only way to see that is to make it. So that's what I've been doing. It's my driving mission in life. You know, these are some digital drawings. I just recently started drawing in Procreate on an iPad. I've been analog this whole time, and it's a scary leap. Here's some flyers from oops. Hang on. How do I? Oh, here's some flyers from some gallery shows. You can see that I've shown a giant robot multiple times. I love showing a giant robot. Eric is always so good to me. I've also done a show. My most recent show is Folk Medic with Chris Chow and Ako Castuera here in LA at Subliminal. You know, I also do a lot of comics festivals, Zine Fest, book fairs, comic conventions. Roadshow Detroit was it was like an illustration. Wow, my head is like blanking. It's a zine fair basically to open the illustration conference Icon, and I curated it. I've curated Roadshow twice, and you know, on the right is just a few of the festivals I've done a couple years ago. Every year I do maybe 6 festivals. I used to travel for them before the pandemic. I strongly feel that festivals and Comic Cons are like the best way to meet the people reading your work and the best way to introduce people to your work. You know, they can talk to you immediately. CALA is a really big one here in Los Angeles, Comic Arts LA, one of my favorites. I did the poster a couple years ago, and they let me do it in English, Spanish, and Korean, which was very cool. But at these festivals, I sell zines, but I also make a lot of merchandise, which I also sell online. So over the years, I've made, you know, wallets, buttons, stickers. That skateboard I made with Eric for Giant Robot. I've made a lot of apparel, t-shirts and sweatshirts and hoodies and muscle tees, more stickers. I model all my own stuff because I don't have the money to pay a real model. You know, I just like making stuff. And currently I'm working on this new comic called TOWE, which is Korean for strawberry. It's about 2 skater girls, and it takes place in Oakland at a DIY skate spot that's right off of 580. I lived in Oakland for just a year, but I lived in Berkeley and in San Francisco for about 10 years. And so, you know, I miss living in the Bay. I love LA, but I do miss living in the Bay, and I wanted to make a comic specifically about this area of Oakland. But yeah, you know, that's all my stuff. If you want to find me on the internet, I'm on Instagram at Hellen with 5 L's, Jo with 5 J's, and you can mail me stuff to my PO box. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you so
Did I
much.
get through that fast enough? I was just like,
No, you were great. Your timing was great. This is perfect.
awesome.
First of all, thank you for drawing all those badass women and girls. Like, you're right. That's necessary. That's incredibly important. And I'm glad like you realized you saw a need and you're like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's
Thank
like, it's very important. Thank you so much. All right. Our final reader, presenter is our week 2 guest of honor, Deth P's son. I'm going to share my screen and let's take it away. All right, I'm going to enlarge this also and wait patiently as this loads. If not, I'm just going to read it from here. All right, Deth P's son is an artist currently living in a small seaside town in Northern California. Originally from down south in San Diego, Deth moved up to the Bay Area where he studied for 2 years at San Francisco State University, and then transferred to the California College of Arts and Crafts, where in 2002, he received a BFA in painting and drawing. Over the years, his work has shown throughout the US and abroad. Deth is also a zine maker. His first one was when he was 17, and he has tried to make one each year since. And most of them are collections of his drawings for each year, but he also ventures in documenting and history zines. These days, he plans vacations around possible zine fairs to table at. Deth's work is informed by his interest in nature, exploring, and wordless storytelling. If there was a way of describing his work, it'd be a suggestive narrative with romantic and depressive images. All right, Deth, go ahead.
Hey, so yeah, I'm Deth P's son. I'm an artist, and you got the intro, and thank you for coming. And I forgot that I was supposed to be speaking because I thought I did that on Sunday, but I'll tell you about some of the stuff that I do. So I'm an artist. I've been making paintings since I could remember. No, not since I can remember. But I've been making paintings since I was like 18 or 19, and I've been exhibiting since I was 19 years old, and I'm 41 years old, so I've been doing it for a really long time. And and I've been making zines for since I was in high school, and I don't have any of those older ones, but the oldest zine I have is this one, which is a zine called 40 Drawings, and it's not that great of a zine, but it did give me one of my first illustration jobs, which is for Urban Outfitters, where I sent them this particular zine, and they made several t-shirts out of it back in the day when I was about 23, 24. Forget what the specific year was, but it gave me a really good job. And then I made other zines in my earlier days. Usually they're all like quarter-size zines, and one of the very first ones was a zine about Oakland, which is like my interactions and a bunch of like maps and stuff of Oakland and all the places that I know of and all the stories that came with it. And then a couple of years later, I found that copy, and then I remade it and added some extra notes because everything always changes, and it's, it was a weird thing to like go back and read what you did 10 years ago and then come back and then find all the weird stuff. Like, here's a photo of my barber who played baseball, and over the years, I've always just made zines, depending on like just making projects and stuff like that. And it's just like, it goes along with like all the other things that I do in life. Like when I'm making art and trying to be creative, it's just one of those side things. I tried making a narrative that was wordless, and it's this scene called They Come at Night, and it's just mostly just pictures of things.
Deth, can you hold them up closer to the camera, please? And like hold them up for a little bit longer, just so like the camera has a chance to focus. There you go.
Oh yeah, sweet.
Thanks.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
And then, yeah, sorry. I did not really plan for this because I honestly thought I was just gonna like listen in on everyone. And then, yeah, I also made a zine about everything I ate. I don't have the actual zine, I just have all the drawings for it. And it's just me cataloging everything I ate for like a year. And that was pretty funny. And yeah, I still make zines. I make portfolio zines and stuff like that. Just zines of all the drawings that I make each year for screen printing. So there is a page of maze. There's some drawings that I made into screen prints eventually. And yeah, exciting stuff. And yeah, so those were the things I do.
Great. So Deth, actually, we had a Q&A with Deth, just Deth, and he got to present for about like 15 to 20 minutes on Sunday. So if you want to learn more about Deth, you can also find out on there, and of course on Deth P Sun's website as well. You were going to say something, Deth, go ahead.
No, I wasn't going to say anything at all. I was just agreeing with you. You guys just do that.
Yes.
You watch whatever happened on Sunday, and then you'll be good.
Yes. I do have a follow-up question though. So Deth also designed let me turn on my video now. Deth also designed our week 2 festival poster and sticker, and there's a cat character that he seems to have in a lot of his work. Can you tell us a little bit more about that cat character, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think I already, it's a character that I drew since I was, it's just like one of those things where I don't really know where it really comes from, but I've always drawn a character that's like that. And it's sort of just like trying to figure out like a character to inhabit a world. And so it's just became an easy thing to like have things revolve around. It's not, I don't know. I'm not like, I don't really ever go make a deep dive into like why the things I draw or all the things I draw or all this other stuff. I just draw the stuff I like to draw, and everything just comes off of that. And that's basically as simple as it gets.
That makes sense. I'm just gonna ask all the other artists, the other 3 invited artists, to turn on their cameras as well, because then I have a bunch of questions for you all. And then we're starting to take some questions that are being mentioned in the chat so you all can answer also. I like your expressions, Deth. I'm very excited or relieved. Maybe a mix of both. So one of the questions for you was, how did you learn to screen print?
Who, me?
Yeah, that's for you.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's always someone to like teach me how to screen print. I think I was in a lithography class at SF State, and there was a dude named David, and he showed me how to screen print the first time. And then when I moved to Fort Bragg here, like I got a little more serious with my friend Jacob, who worked at a screen printing place. My neighbor is actually a studio mate, and she's been screen printing since the 70s and 80s and stuff like that. She's a textiles artist, and so we like most of the stuff that I know is like pretty archaic, like old school 80s style. And when I see other people do studio visits of their like screen printing studios, I'm like, oh, that's nice. That's nice stuff. But anyways, that's how I learned.
Thanks. And before we transition to all the other guests, I wanted to ask you, Deth, again, how do you know all the artists that you've invited?
I know Eric because he found me through an artist group named Cozy and Dan, who he showed a long time ago, and they found me online. And I do not know how they found me online, but they bought paintings from me. No, they didn't buy paintings. We did a trade, and then Eric put me in his magazine, and that's how I met Kerry, because she emailed Kerry Ann, and she emailed me, and then we exchanged. We were just trading stuff because I met a lot of artists and stuff like that, like in my earlier days through like just trading and stuff like that. And then I met Hellen Jo while tabling at the Alternative Press Expo, and I bought a bunch of her, like her one, that big black zine, 8.5 by 11. That was pretty rad, and I don't know whatever happened to that one, but I really loved it. And we were like me and my friends were all like, "This person's awesome, makes awesome art," and stuff like that. So we're really pleased about that. And yeah, that's how I know everyone.
Nice. Thank you for telling us. Okay, now I'm gonna shift and ask everyone questions. Was there a point in your life where you were like, okay, I'm gonna become an artist, like this is my thing? It's not like, there must have been a point where like, I think I can do this as a career, or I'm gonna continue my pursuit of becoming a full-fledged artist. Was there a moment like that in your life that made you decide? And Kerry Ann, can you start us off, please?
I don't think there was a win, but I think that maybe, I don't know, that's sort of the point of what made it happen is just maybe a sense of survival, just against, I don't know, boredom, loneliness, I don't know, otherness. But as far as thinking about it seriously, yeah, it's a weird thing to sort of wear or actually sort of claim. And especially when you're younger, you're like, oh yeah, what is this? It's something you do. You don't really think too much about. Well, at least I don't think so in my case.
Thanks. Eric, how about you?
I think there was a point maybe about 5 years in. So I lived at I was living with my parents still, and I was getting older, right? I finished college and all that stuff, and I was working on Giant Robot, and I think I was late 20s, and I was at my parents' house still. And things were starting to work a little bit. So I think there was a moment where I was thinking, well, this has to work, or if it doesn't, then I'm just going to be at my parents' house for a longer amount of time, right? Like this is just going to be it. So I just went and just gave it a shot, and gave it many years for it to either work or not work. So thankfully it kind of worked, and it just got a little further and further. But there was a moment, I think it took about 5 years for me to go, okay, I think this could work into something. So yeah.
How about you, Hellen?
Well, I've been drawing since I was really young, probably in preschool. My parents moved around a lot, so I just didn't have any friends because I couldn't make lasting friendships. They were moving around the US for graduate school. So I've always drawn, and I've always loved it. And growing up, my parents would always be like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would say, I want to be a newspaper cartoonist, because that's the only exposure to art that I saw. And they're like, oh, you can do that on the side after you become a professor, because they're both professors. And I was like, okay, that means I want to be a professor. And then on the side, I'm going to be a syndicated newspaper cartoonist. And then I got to college and I was like, I'm so stupid. I'm too stupid for school. I hate academia. And, I dropped out of UC Berkeley and then Academy of Art, because every time I was in school, I was already kind of doing the stuff I wanted to do. I was already making zines. I was already making stuff for Giant Robot. And it just, not that school isn't important, but for me, it wasn't what I needed. So I think I just always knew, and I was just selfish enough to just keep doing it and eventually, fail out of school. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Deth, how about you?
Yeah, I think when I was younger, I went to a summer camp at the California College of the Arts. No, wait, it's Cal Arts. I went to Cal Arts and stuff when I was like 17. And then I met a bunch of other artists who were my age. And it was the first time that I was like, oh, like, there's a bunch of people who I get along with and that I kind of like, and I wanted to hang out with other artists. So I think when I was younger, my entire goal was to like just go to art college, just so I could just hang out with other artists and stuff like that and be with other creatives. And then it just sort of spiraled out of that, where I just kept on doing all the things that everyone else was doing around me. It's like, do art, make paintings, do art shows. And that's basically it.
Nice. You all have such different art styles. Was there also like a decision? Because I mean, we could, as artists, we try lots of different art styles and then we explore different avenues. What made you decide to stick to this one type of art style, or thematically you just said, all right, I think this is where I feel the most honest, or this is what I want to pursue and continue? Was there a point like that? This time, let's have Helen start us off, because I think in your presentation, you also talked about that.
Yeah, well, my art style's just been developing. I've been developing it since I was a kid. As a kid, I would get translated manga from my cousins in Korea, and I thought they were Korean comics. Really disappointed when I found out they were Japanese in like college, and I was like, what? Are you kidding me? But so I would be copying like Candy and Sailor Moon and all these like shoujo manga styles with the giant eyes, and that face shape that I draw is like, it's just a straight rip from Ranma, from Rumiko Takahashi. And that's kind of how I developed my style. Like I would constantly just copy the things that I was reading at the time that I liked and take, certain elements. When I first went to college, I started reading graphic novels like, Love and Rockets is like one of my top 3 ever inspirational comics. And I would be reading Jaime Hernandez's work, and it's just like, the way he does like, black and white contrast with very little gray, the way he just draws like these strong faces and just really graphic imagery. It was like, I'm stealing that. I was reading Charles Burns. Same thing, he has like heavy black lines. I stole that. I was reading a lot of Julie Doucet, and it's like, well, her stuff's a little more messy. I'll steal that too. And I just like kept stealing things until eventually it got to a point where it's like, oh, this is just how I draw. And one thing I've also noticed that artists do is when they find their style, the way they draw characters, it kind of resembles the artists themselves, like physically. And so I think at that point, it's kind of like, oh, I like this because it looks like me. It's probably an egotistical thing that I chose this style, but I like it and I keep drawing in that style. So, yeah.
You, Kerry Ann, how about you?
Thanks, Anand. Yeah, I was just conscious of style conventions, especially training as an illustrator designer, and I guess it's sort of feeling a similar way that my sort of style was sort of still in flux, but we're somewhere along the line it was definitely informed by caffeine, late nights, punk rock, friends and role models. I was really interested in just comics as well. I mean, Love and Rockets, thinking about Sandman comics, Neil Gaiman, thinking about surrealism, Dada, G. Vorcha, Crass fold-out albums, Winston Smith, Deb Kennedy's artwork, just kind of eating up sort of whatever's around, and just, being quite open to that, just kind of absorbing what you can. And I think it's been a useful thing for me to sort of, keep sort of the antenna up.
You showed us collages in your presentation. What made you decide to do collages?
I think it was, it just worked out by way of, I don't know, it seemed to click by way of a visual language for me, like being able to see possibility in things that have already got a life or a history or a story, bringing things together. I think it just, for me, it seemed like a really rich space for possibility for image making.
Makes sense. All right, Eric, you're up.
I guess I'm listening to everybody. I'm like, okay, so I don't really do visual art, so I always think, okay, how's this question going to work for me? But I do know that in my work practice, I try to be best I can. I try to be as fair as best as I can, and I try to be honest as best as I can. I think maybe those are things that I've kind of wanted to do from the beginning of Giant Robot all the way to now. I think that's kind of like part of the ethos behind a lot of the things I do and maybe the decisions I make. It's like I think about how things are going to affect other people, or other people I don't know, other people I do know. And maybe that's kind of what informs just my work in general. And I try hard as I can to stick to that. So maybe, you know, although I don't do visual art, I guess, but that's sort of the ethos behind everything, or I try hard as I can anyway.
Yeah. Thanks.
Hopefully that kind of works, but it doesn't really tell you about my style or a style or anything, but I guess that's sort of the ethos behind it.
Yeah, it tells us more about you, and that's what really this Q&A is about, this thing Captions. We want to learn more about you as an artist and all of you as an artist. So yeah, that definitely helps. Thanks.
Thanks.
And Deth, so one of the things I was gonna say for you before you also add something is in your posters, like you draw a lot of objects, whether it's food or different items or things. Like you could also talk about that, about why you decide to do that.
Oh, in the poster?
Yeah.
Oh, because you were like, I originally drew the square and then you were like, can I make it 11 by 17? And I was like, all right. So I just added filler at the bottom.
You filled it up, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, is that the only question?
No, I also want to know about your art style, because your art style is also very distinct.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I consumed a lot of like other things, and I just reprocessed all that stuff into like whatever style that I had. I remember when I was very young, the first time I moved to San Francisco, and there was a show called Bay Area Now, and that's where I saw like Margaret Gillen's work and all the other stuff that's like that. So like that influenced, that set me off in a good way of like, I shouldn't, like, because as an 18-year-old, when you go to college and you're like trying to just do what everyone tells you to do. And I remember a teacher going into my sketchbook and be like, well, why don't you paint this stuff instead of like what everyone else was trying to do? And then it was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so I just started doing that. And that was a really good start. And so a lot of stuff as I am getting older, or as I'm progressing and stuff like that, it's just picking apart all the things that I like that's around me, like such as like botanical drawings, or like I like Hergé's drawing style and coloring style, and like getting the essence of like things that I see in Moomin or TOWE and stuff like that. So those are all those things that like I don't try to like copy or emulate anyone, but like just take all those small bits, just pretty much like what Hellen is saying about like how she developed her stuff. It's just like, it just all goes along. And then I've always drawn the way I've always drawn in terms of like how I want to draw, like just continuous stream of conscious, like drawing everything that I see around me. Yeah, having a light hand, doing all this stuff. So basically that's just it.
Thanks. I wanted to read off a comment that we received on YouTube, I believe, from Peg Chen. It says, Kerry Ann, Hellen, and Eric, you're all awesome. So great to hear more about your creative backgrounds and your zines. And thank you, Deth, for choosing these artists. Okay. And some of these comments and questions are also being posted in our Zoom chat as well. The thing I wanted to ask about is, well, I can't overlook the fact that we're all people of color in this Q&A right now, which unfortunately tends to be rare outside of social and community-centered events like Zine Fest. As people of color, what has been your experience in publishing, art exhibits, and just in various like art communities? Eric, can you start us off, please?
Can you ask that again, please?
No worries. I'm just saying, as a person of color, what has been your experience in various art communities?
Gotcha. I mean, at least in Asian American land, I guess they're both very different from each other. But I've been thankful I've been able to work in both a little bit, like work with artists from Asia and work with Asian American artists as well. I think it's interesting to see, because I think at least from when I started doing Giant Robot and maybe many years in, I didn't see a community. Well, there was a community. I just didn't see it as a possibility to earn a living for at least Asian American artists. And today I see it as a viable option. But you know, if you want to do art, you can try and do it. And I think you have a good shot at doing it. It's just a matter of aesthetics and work, you know, business acumen or whatnot. But I think that's kind of like at least a difference from when I first got into it and got into like art or interested in art. That's kind of the difference that I see. But I feel like today is a much better option. I feel like there's actually, you can almost say that there's a genre, and you can almost say that there's a scene of Asian American, like at least visual artists. There are many groups, many, just supportive groups, events. A lot of things are out there that I don't even know about. So I know that at least for Asian Americans, I see, I do see some kind of infrastructure starting at least. So I think there's something out there, but I don't pay attention to a lot of it. I hate to say, I just kind of know the artists that I like and I work with. So that doesn't matter if you're Asian or a person of color or not. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I sit on it personally now. But I do see that there's a world for it that seems to be helpful for at least Asian American ones that I see. So hopefully.
I was going to say, yeah, like you, Eric, you and Kerry Ann, in a way, like both of you are also providing spaces and creating platforms for other artists. And like you did with Giant Robot, like creating platforms for other Asian Americans. So how is that different, Hellen, for when you work with, because you worked with lots of different companies and on different shows and different things. How's that for you? How's your experience?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking that, like, as someone who's worked in different industries, like in comics, when I first started making comics 20 years ago, I could count the number of Asian American women on one hand. Like, there were so few of us. And now I almost feel like, in terms of POC artists in zine publishing and in book arts, and especially in editorial illustration, we're almost an overrepresented group. I mean, it's still, all industries are still majority very white. But among the POCs, we're almost overrepresented. And sometimes I think, like, we kind of have a little bit of a responsibility to boost like brown artists and Black artists, because we were so lucky to have this like kind of blow up in representation in the last 10 years. I think a lot of it had to do with Giant Robot. Eric has put a spotlight on a lot of us that we might not have gotten otherwise. And now it's like, okay, we have to keep going. We have to get everybody in, every person of color, just get in here now. And I see that happening in zines a lot. Zines is like one of the most inclusive communities that I think I've ever been a part of, which is really wonderful. But then when you start going, towards more corporate things like illustration is still very white, but also very East Asian. It's very, very East Asian. And a lot of it has to do with, who has access to art school education, which is very expensive. And a lot of people happen to be East Asian. It's a thing. And it's awesome. On one hand, it's awesome because I'm so happy that we're here and we're very visible. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, it's still so imbalanced. Like, we still have a long way to go in order to get a real sense of equity in like who's allowed to make work, who's allowed to have it published. And then when you move into animation, especially television animation, which is mostly where I've worked, it's still very, very white, very, very male, very straight. And, in television, there's a lot of gatekeeping because a lot of the people in the highest positions, decision-making positions, who are television executives, or development executives who are greenlighting what shows are being made, a lot of them are very progressive and forward people, but they are mostly rich white people. And so it's hard. Like, my partner, Calvin Wong, he made a pilot for Cartoon Network. It's brilliant. It's about two Asian American kids, a brother and a sister. Their dad runs a Chinese restaurant in a Modesto style town. And it's really cute. They made the pilot. It didn't get made into a TV show. And it's, seeing the steps of trying to make something for a big corporation. It's just like, oh, people in higher positions of these like really moneyed companies, they want to support, but they don't understand how. They don't understand, how race is really, it's just such an ingrained part of the gatekeeping into media. And so they don't know how to fix it. And I feel like it's almost like the final frontier. It's like the only way to really make television inclusive is not to make more POC characters. It's to have more POC writers. and story developers and character designers and showrunners, mainly showrunners and also executives. So it's like, it's weird because I started in zines, I moved to TV, I felt really disillusioned by that specifically. And now I'm just working in zines again. And it's like, I love zines, but it's also like, I don't know how to change like things like television and movies and film. You know, if you're like an Asian American, or if you're BIPOC person who's thinking of becoming a network executive, please do it. It will be so hard, but you will make all these things possible that are just like straight up impossible right now. Yeah. And I kind of seen that in fine arts too. You go to gallery shows, a lot of galleries are owned by white artists because they have the money to open these places. And like, I really appreciate the opportunity to be in those spaces. But it's like, yeah, I want to see more like Black owned galleries. I want to see more, brown art publications, and like at every tier, not just like the highest echelons, but like all the way down to like just more, there are plenty of POC people in zines. We need more, just everybody come in.
Yeah.
And it's how I feel for every level of media. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of trust in places that have a lot of money. So, I feel this way about animation, but I also feel kind of like, I can't do anything about it. I don't know what the solution is there. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Helen. Agree with all of it, of course. Representation at all levels is needed. I'm finding this out also as a teacher, because now I have a class of kindergartners, and then them seeing me as this brown, this is the first time they're having a South Asian teacher in front of them, and their reactions, what they are. I take as many opportunities as I can to dress up in Indian clothes and be like, hey, look, it's me. This is my culture. Yes, you are going to get used to a brown person who is teaching you, who is in this kind of position. Kerry Ann, we're so fortunate to have you because you can also provide us perspective from New Zealand. Like, these are all American perspectives. How is it like in New Zealand?
Thanks, Anand, and thanks so much, Helen, as well. These are conversations that we have on the ground here in Aotearoa, New Zealand as well. I think back to your original kind of question around what it's like. I mean, I feel like I've been quite fortunate as well, feeling quite welcome and respected coming to the table amongst zine and art community-based events. But it could be to do also scale-wise, New Zealand being a lot smaller and closer, and also working for as long as I have. But I'm also constantly blown away by how zines and self-publishing allow for that nuance to come through. And that's such an integral part of independent publishing, which I really value, that it gave me a voice when I was younger, dealing with, getting really frustrated at the world, and it continues to do so. And I think there's something in this kind of, the space that we work in, and kind of pulling things together. And I think what you said, Helen, about the gatekeepers and, who's in the room, that's really important. And where does that start? It's something that we've been sort of discussing in and out of the Asian Aotearoa Arts Hui network, and the conversations that I see happening here tend to be cross-cultural conversations around Asian Aotearoa arts. So a sort of wider sense of what that is. It's still being defined by those who can come and massage and shape that, but also in conversation with Indigenous Maori perspectives and Pacific perspectives as well, being really conscious of that, and Pākehā European colonial sort of perspectives. So just really thinking about those intersections. And yeah, just I sort of also feel like it comes back to being the change you want to see, and highly encourage that sense of leadership, I guess, so that those points are being kind of pushed forward and getting to see things happen. That's such a good thing about sort of a long time ago, like, because I've got family and friends in the US that I've sort of come back and forth over your way across the date line over the years, and we've had these rich conversations as well. And yeah, seeing what happens with Asian American arts and culture, it's just, yeah, giant robot, Eric, again, props to kind of come back to that, like just those points. And it can start from a really humble way. You know, I think I get quite excited also about, you know, stuff that, yeah, new stuff that comes up that, you know, always surprises me. You know, and that's really what I'm hopeful for, that it, you know, just keeps going.
Thank you so much. And thank you all so much. And one of the things that now we're shifting the interview a little bit because we're also running out of time, is I told you about lightning round questions. So these are quick questions, and I changed one of the questions, so you may be surprised. And with quick, short answers, you don't need to explain yourself. I will not be asking follow-up questions regarding them. But the order you are going to respond is the order that I'm just seeing on my Zoom screen, and it's going to be Deth, then Kerry Ann, then Eric, then Hellen. So, and you can all just keep your audio on at the same time, so we don't have to keep like flipping back and forth. All right, the first question is, you prefer digital or analog? And by analog, I mean like using pen, pencil, paper, as opposed to working digitally. Go ahead, Deth.
Oh, it's the same. I thought Helen was supposed to answer that after me.
Oh, am I next?
Oh,
yeah.
no, it's Deth, then Kerry Ann, then Eric, then Hellen.
Sorry. Yep. Analog.
I prefer analog, but I do everything in digital.
I prefer analog, but only a little bit more than digital. I also like digital.
Awesome. Favorite color or colors, but you can only choose up to 3 colors. Go ahead.
I kind of like pastels colors. I like pink or like a light green. And yeah, that's it, I think. And a light violet. Those are the 3 colors I like.
I had pink, gray, and orange.
Blue, black, and white.
Black, white, and red.
Thank you. Do you have a favorite creative work, whether it's like a favorite, it doesn't have to be the favorite, like just one of your favorites, whether it's a graphic novel or a movie or a TV show or a music album or an illustration or even an artist, anything, just your favorite creative work.
Tove Jansson.
I was gonna say the Movements.
Wait, is it my turn already? I couldn't hear. Oh, okay. Yoshitomo Nara.
It's a toss-up between Tai Matsumoto, Jaime Hernandez.
Do you say GIF or GIF?
GIF.
GIF, because GIF is an abrasive cleaning product in New Zealand.
Jif, because it's peanut butter too, right?
I say GIF.
Do you prefer, and this is because of Deth, do you like cats or dogs or something else?
I guess I like cats.
Bears.
I think I like just about all animals.
I like cats, but I have a bird.
What is your most creative time? Do you think it's the morning, the afternoon, evening, or nighttime?
Nighttime.
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 You get one wish. What would you wish for?
I guess sandwich. I don't know.
World peace.
Everyone to be happy.
Endless energy for everybody.
Ooh.
Share one unpopular opinion.
I don't know what a popular opinion would be. Can you skip me?
Yeah, you can say pass. Go ahead. So, I mean, basically, I'm also asking something that if you were to say it, a lot of people would disagree with you, kind of.
Oh, I mean, I like the Little Women last movie. It was pretty all right.
Oh, sorry, it's not all about you.
I like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants movie.
I don't, even though it's a pandemic, I honestly don't like talking to my friends that much right now.
Can you describe yourself? I mean, not can you, please describe yourself in 3 words.
Artist, Californian, and painter.
Quiet, fun-loving, and unruly.
Yeah, it's so hard. 3 words, but it can't. I'm gonna make it a sentence. Just I do shit. That's about it. Sorry, I can't think of anything.
Tired, self-loathing.
If you, and this is kind of off script a little bit, but if you could name your proudest or your best moment as an artist, what would it be?
I don't know. They're all the same, I guess.
That's great.
I guess in the context of this Zine Fest, just being here, keeping on going.
Oh, it's my turn. I forgot. I think for a while I probably, a younger me would have said, oh, I've curated like big museum shows that were pretty epic, right? They're really great. But ultimately, proud moments are just like Deth. It's all the same. Like proud moment is right now, so it's okay.
I think my proudest moment was, it's hard. Maybe the first time I was ever in a giant robot group show. It was in San Francisco, and I was just like, I couldn't believe it, because I was like a failing student, and it's like, wow, I have stuff in a gallery. Like, I didn't think that was possible. I'm still shocked by it.
All right, and the final lightning round question. Because as artists, we tend to criticize ourselves a lot, or just whether it's our lives, our work, anything really. I think we just tend to do that every now and then, more so than others, I feel. Say one nice thing about yourself.
No.
You have time to think of something, Deth. Say something nice about yourself.
Say that again?
I'm productive.
Yeah, I guess I'm interested in stuff. I'm interested in those who came before me, those who are around, those who are, up and coming. I'm just super interested.
I try. That's kind of it. Or I say I try or I tried. Those are it.
mean, the easiest thing to reach for is I know I'm good. So, yeah.
You are.
You are. Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. Very.
It's true. All four of you are all fantastic. I think I'm going to close it with that. Thank you all so much for sharing your work with us and telling us more about your lives. Before we continue, I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm going to try presenting and present with some week 2 festival merch that Deth created for us. This is the poster. There's only 20 Riso prints. They were printed by Shoot Studio. And of course, there are 50 die cut stickers, vinyl stickers that Deth designed as well. Yeah, this is the famous poster we were talking about. This, all these little objects on the bottom. And of course, you can find these all on sfzinefest.org. And of course, you can find more of Deth's work on dethpsun.com. These are upcoming Cyberfest events. Tomorrow, we have a Riso demo with Shoot Studio and a drawing zine making session that I believe Lauren is leading, one of our other organizers is leading. That's from 1 to 2 p.m. and the other is from 2 to 3 p.m. Then Sunday starts off our 3rd and final week of Cyberfest. So we have show and tell from 2 to 3, a panel of parent artists. So we're speaking with artists who also happen to be parents and how they're managing in our current time. I mean, just like with all that's happening. And a Q&A with our week 3 guest of honor, of course, Tana Tucker. As you know, our ASL interpretation for tonight's event was provided by ProBonoASL. And we are fiscally sponsored by Intersection for the Arts, which is a Bedrock Bay Area arts nonprofit that provides people working, let me just move that a little, working in arts and culture with fiscal sponsorship and resources to grow. Before I actually completely turn off, I realize I just want to say thanks and let the artists say anything at the end if they'd like.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks so much, Anand. That was great. Thanks, everyone. It's been a real joy.
And of course, thank you also to the volunteers who are helping on our social media. And thank you, EE and Michaela, for captioning. So we've had 2 humans live captioning this Zoom event. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for being very thoughtful about all the things that, sorry, like the opening and kind of ground rules and all of it's just everything's really done very thoughtfully. And I think that's really great.
Thank you.
I don't know.
No, thank you so much. Yeah, we're working a lot this year. And as we have been in the past, to try to make this as accessible and inclusive for everyone, to make sure it's a safe place for everyone involved. And we're just so glad you all are here. I think with that, we can fake wave so then we can stop the streaming and continue chatting.